Alex Jones.
God bless my family. I love my wife and children more than life itself. Everything I do is for the future of all my children. They may not understand why I have sacrificed so much, why I'm so dedicated to this work, but someday they will. I want them to know they are the most important people in my life and how very, very much I love them. William Cooper. Bill Cooper shot dead last night about 1:30 in the morning Eastern Time. Today, I guess in the mountain or Pacific zones, it was yesterday, and it's painful to watch all of this unfold. But it's happened. And it all started with the IRS, the private run-for-profit collection agency with the Federal Reserve coming after him. I went back and dug into the archives of the Arizona Republic and found the sheriff, when the feds were prodding him to SWAT team Cooper, saying, oh, no, I don't want another Ruby Ridge. We're not going to do that. The question is, why, after September 11th, did they go after William Cooper? And we're hearing a lot of rumors out there of what has developed. Most people are just reading off the script from the Apache County Sheriff's Department, which I have here in front of me and which we've posted on Infowars.com. I actually called the Sheriff's Department several times and tried to get the story of exactly what happened, and it is mirrored by their actual press release. They admit they were there luring him out of his home, luring him down the hill. He lives up on top of a mesa, those flat-topped hills so famous out in the West. Then he tried to get back to his house, drove around some of them. They began firing at him, so he jumped out and fired back, shooting a SWAT team member in the head, and then they claim they returned fire. I don't believe that for a minute. They love to shoot first. In fact, let's go back to what happened in Lubbock, Texas, just a few months ago, where they shot two of their own officers, killing one, shot the unarmed man, and then tried to claim that he shot the officers until someone in the department blew the whistle. We played the audio off the video here on the show. The video links are on Infowars.com. They shot with their own cameras as they start screaming and crying, APC, APC, get me an armored personnel carrier. Then you have the SWAT teams in 4 East German APCs firing into 14 houses in Santa Clarita, north of Los Angeles, burning down houses, running around foaming at the mouth with their bloodlust. You had a SWAT team raid a school earlier this year in Fort Worth, Texas, on a so-called grill, blew one of their own officers' heads off. I don't believe it for a minute that Cooper fired first. They admit they created a disturbance down the hill from his house. He drove down in his truck, and then they claim he fired at them. Oh, yeah, right. Looks to me like the guy was laying on the ground. He only had one leg, and they probably walked up to finish him off, and he pulled out his pistol and shot one of them. That's more likely than what they're saying, because it's hard to shoot somebody twice in the head with a handgun unless you're at close range. But we'll probably never know the truth. The officer is holding on to his life. I heard some unconfirmed reports that he's dead. We called the hospital, and they won't say. No doubt by tomorrow or later this evening we'll have all the details for you. We're going to go through all of it. Then we've got to cover the other news, what's developing. They're back in the media saying torture is needed of the American people. They need to start torturing us and not a minute to waste. And the San Francisco Chronicle, al-Qaeda terrorist, worked with the FBI. Yes, shades of 1993 where the feds cooked the bomb and trained the driver in the first World Trade Center bombing. By the grace of God, someone parked around the columns so they were unable to get their FBI payload up against it to bring one tower down and impose their draconian control, which they've now gotten through. But let's see them implement it. You see, Cooper wasn't like a bunny rabbit you could just go kill predators. He struck back, didn't he?
From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of vitally important news to cover this evening. Of course, our top story is William Cooper, shot dead by SWAT team police. The new special variety we have. Russia had them for 80 years. Nazi Germany had them, of course. China has them. Mexico had them 50 years ago. The Inquisitors had them 500, 600, 700 years ago. Executioners always wore black ski masks. And they dropped by to kill the naval veteran, highly decorated, no criminal record until the last few years when he wouldn't show up for court hearings with the IRS trying to take his house. Best-selling author. I interviewed Mr. Cooper years ago many times, but he seemed to get more and more frustrated and, frankly, angry as time went on. And it was the stress. Some people cannot handle the stress of knowing just how evil the globalists are. I've been doing this for 8 years, and, frankly, I've gotten better at handling it. Some people, it wears them down. But a good man who did a lot of good work is dead, according to globalist newspapers. We have the press release here from the police department that the Arizona Republic hasn't gotten around to yet. I also dug into the archives and have several stories from this year and stories going back to 1995 about Cooper from the Arizona Republic. And we'll go through what he said would happen back in 95 and tell me if it hasn't happened. All we're doing here is warning people, exposing who's behind the terrorism, who stands to gain, defending the Republic, the Constitution, our family's rights to live in a free nation. And for that, we're bad, I guess. But the good news is, 5 years ago, when people like Cooper were trying to get the word out, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when others were fighting hard, you didn't have the massive numbers we see today. The good news is people are waking up. Mel Gibson's making films like Braveheart and The Patriot, and Richard Linklater's making films like Waking Life, and the discussion is everywhere, and they're even starting a new ABC News show to try to steal our thunder, where they interview different so-called conspiracy theorists every night on television. Of course, it'll be pap and manipulation, but they're losing their ratings, they're falling apart, they're imploding while we're growing. The message of freedom is being heard loud and clear, and that's why you saw this horrible terrorist attack of September 11th, the way to destabilize the world and plunge us into a global system of slavery. Don't forget that Vladimir Putin, 2 years ago, when he had only been appointed president, blowing up 3 Russian apartment buildings, attempting to blame it on the Chechens for a pretext for a war and a police state clampdown in the major cities of Russia. And it worked for him, despite the fact that local Moscow police, the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing, actually caught members of the FSB, the KGB by a new name, still the same, planting explosives on the support columns of a 4th apartment building. Moscow. This is what governments do. And now they're talking about torturing Americans. And we're probably going to go to your calls a little bit earlier tonight. I had Zane Wally from the Paragon Foundation coming on to talk about land rights and the border being wide open and United Nations observers being down there, now photographs being taken of them. This is a pretty mainstream organization. In fact, he's co-hosting America's Most Wanted this week to talk about how the southern border is open. We're only going to have Zane Wally on, though, for about 10 minutes, coming up at about 20, because I want to have time to get to your calls tonight. If you want to get lined up to talk about the murder of Bill Cooper by goon squads, you're welcome to join us by dialing toll-free 1-800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Incidentally, we have posted the police version of the story on Infowars.com. The Arizona Republic article links to WilliamCooper.com, HourOfTheTime.com, and many other pertinent stories. So you can look at what we know right now, which is basically just all government garbage, and make up your mind of what's developing. Though I do have some sources that are giving me some pretty good info that I've then checked out with the Sheriff's Department, and I guess they haven't taught their people how to lie completely yet because it started conflicting with their statement. But they do admit they lured him out of the house by creating a disturbance. They came out, pulled guns on his car, drove away. He was getting up to his house, SWAT team out of the car, and then they claim he shot one of their SWAT team men in black uniform and ski mask, and that they then shot him. Of course, the problem with that is, and we know how the SWAT teams like to do things, and we've seen their track record. And interesting that he could get off 2 shots and shoot one in the head before they could shoot him. I'm sad for everybody involved. This is the system, though. You think the globalists care about you police as they sick you on naval veterans living up on top mountains, doing radio shows, and printing newspapers? Meanwhile, the communist Chinese are in Panama threatening to nuke us again. Just came out today in the Sunday Times of London and the BBC. They're putting out celebration TV shows showing the buildings collapse. The Russians are rolling out new Tupolev missiles threatening to hit us, building giant underground bases. The borders are wide open. Sovereignty sold out. Some of our last steel mills are shutting down in Pittsburgh, PA. Chinese slave goods are on all the shelves. But that's not the threat, is it? It's 58-year-old naval veterans who are eccentric, sitting up on top of a mountain, doing a radio show. And you see what's going to happen out of this. There are 130 million gun owners in this country. That means if 1% refuse to hand them over and resist, that is millions of combatants. 1,300,000. And what do you have? 650,000 police, about half of them are support. I don't want that to happen. I'm not in some macho mindset of, you just come on, boy, we're waiting on you. But you're on the nightly news, your bosses are, talking about how you want to torture Americans. You abolished the Fourth Amendment last week. It's funny, right, as NBC's airing Uprising about Jews defending themselves from the men in black uniforms. They didn't wear black ski masks, though. Well, I guess that was a little much for them, even them. That Bill Cooper's laying in a pool of blood outside his house after you lured him outside, like predators would do to a prey animal, pounced on him. But you see, he wasn't a complete prey animal, was he? He wasn't like a gazelle out there on the African plain. You're a lion that comes stalking up to jump on its back. Wasn't like being an owl swooping down on a rat. It was a human being who'd served his country and done the best he could and predicted a lot of things and fought a lot of corruption. And so you gunned him down. You gunned him down, and you admit in your own press release that you lured him outside. That you created a disturbance. They admit that. I'm going to read their press release. And isn't it funny they claim they were there to deliver a warrant for not showing up to a federal court case and for some type of threats or assault there on the property. I know Cooper on his website, they were kept sending feds and others onto his property to try to start some type of fight with him so they could kill him. And they got some more trumped-up charges and then lured him back outside again and killed him. Sneaking around in the dark in their black helmets and their black uniforms with their Cobra and skull patches with their little MP5 9mm submachine guns. But, you know, you don't have to be Bill Cooper for him to come after you. You can just be some guy in Newcastle, PA, walking through a parking lot, walk by a police car, suddenly a huge German Shepherd's going, right there, you know, those big old things, and you go, shut up. You raise your hands. The police admit that's all the man did. They're charging with a felony, inciting the officer. Newcastle, PA, October 20th was in the news. They're going after him, throwing the book. You talk back to our dog, boy. What about the ranchers are having to arrest or kill? You didn't give us your ranch, boy. Didn't give us your farm. We're going to have to take it. I'm sorry. It's for the country. Don't worry. We're just doing our job. That's all we're doing is doing our job. Hey, look at there. CIA shipping in more cocaine. Well, we all know they do it, but we still got to arrest your kids when they got a marijuana cigarette and throw them into a jail cell so they can get raped by some animal because we're just doing our job. Yeah, I know the prison population is 6.5 million, police have told me, but that's good. We're getting more criminals in there. Now, who are the criminals? Gun owners. So here's the headlines. Militia leader killed, deputy wounded during attempted arrest. This is all up on Infowars.com. We got it all. All the stories I've seen out there on it. A national leader of the militia movement has been killed, and an Apache County Sheriff's deputy wounded in a shootout, authorities said. William Milton Cooper, 58, of Eager, had hosted a talk show broadcast on the worldwide Christian radio out of Nashville, which received a phone from his home in St. John's. He had millions of listeners worldwide, including Timothy McVeigh. Notice how they mix that in. No, he helped expose that Timothy McVeigh was a mind control slave and that the government blew that building up. Now we have David Shippers, a former impeachment lawyer, going public, and Colonel Roberts. I mean, so you got a problem, government. More and more credible people are going to stand up. So you can throw names around, it ain't going to work. The deputy's name is being withheld by authorities, was shot twice in the head while trying to arrest Cooper. A State Department of Public Safety spokesman said today Cooper was killed by another officer. All the details, your calls, and a quick 10-minute interview about the border situation with Zane Wally coming up, so stay with us. All right, on November 6th, and that's Central or Eastern time, it was November 5th, Pacific time, or I guess that's a mountain over there, William Cooper was shot dead by ninja-suited men in black engaging in their terror in the dark of night after luring him with a, quote, disturbance at the bottom of the hill at his property. After luring him, they tried to trap him, pull him out of his car, pointed guns at him. They admit all this. He peacefully tried to drive away from them to get back to his home. While exiting his truck to get back into his house, his sanctuary, they gunned him down. Somewhere during these different proceedings, one of the deputies got shot twice in the head and is in critical condition, has had several surgeries today. We do not know if he is alive or dead at this time. Reports are coming out that he is dead, but that is unconfirmed. We called, first heard he was dead, and they said he wasn't. I've been talking to the sheriff's department. Some nice lady answers the phone. We have their phone numbers posted from their press release on Infowars.com. The reason I say some nice lady is she obviously wasn't part of this, and normally when you call the sheriff's department when they've done some evil deed, they're very rude. They haven't been rude. I think they're very scared right now, and rightfully so. They were sicked upon Mr. Cooper by federal Gestapo forces. Again, all the details are coming up throughout the night as they develop. Got a bunch of other stuff we haven't gotten to yet, but right now let's get a couple calls in. As promised, we're going to have open phones tonight to talk about this. Love to hear from you. 1-800-259-9231. Doug in Delaware. You're on the air, sir.
Good evening, Alex. It's a strange coincidence. Earlier today, I was actually going to call you out of the blue and ask you what were your thoughts about Bill Cooper. And I hear the beginning of your show, and my heart, just sunk in my chest. It's unthinkable. I've read Behold a Pale Horse. I thought it was a great book, and it's one of the many tools I use to talk to other people. And what I'm thinking is going to be a result of this, as it becomes more and more known by more people, it's just as if we needed more fuel. It's more fuel to the fire of how evil these people really are.
Well, it's a hardening. It lets us know that if we lick their boots or if we try to beg them or go along with them, they're not going to stop. I mean, I was reviewing tapes sent to me by a firefighter at a FEMA meeting. They were teaching firefighters and police that, quote, the founding fathers were terrorists. So everything we love, mom and apple pie, is now evil.
Yeah, and as you said previously, I believe last night, that the Constitution, we should not assume that that is any guarantee of rights. That's supposed to be the supreme law of the land.
Well, it was confirmed that on Fox News, the chairman, John Chiefs of Staff, said that said that they violate the Constitution all the time and it's no big deal. The point is, what I was saying is the Constitution simply enumerates, like God made his laws on the tablet to Moses. The tablet and the laws in and of themselves weren't the power of the law. It was God behind it. So the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, only points out our God-given rights. It's up to us to defend them. And when you drive by a cemetery full of dead veterans, and that's what Bill Cooper is now, a veteran, a patriot, a soldier fighting for this country, like anybody else that's fought for this nation, from George Washington to somebody charging the beaches of Iwo Jima, this is what we're dealing with. When you drive by those little white crosses, those men didn't die to not have a Fourth Amendment for their children and grandchildren. They didn't become wounded and sweat and bleed and go through all that trauma to live in a third world police state where we're paralyzed.
Well, that's right. He was, as you said, as I read, he was in the Navy. He had quite a high rank, and he was simply revealing the truth as was presented to him. And
well, I already said it. Everything Bill Cooper said about Oklahoma City, and, I made a film 3 years ago about it as well. David Shippers is now saying, the guy that brought down the mob in Chicago, a Democrat who the Republicans hired to impeach Clinton, and he's saying the government had prior knowledge, and he was begging him to stop the terror attacks. I mean, they're going to have a problem, though. You see, they're going to have more and more credible people like General Parton and Admiral Moore and Colonel Roberts and Dr. Frederick Whiters, former head of the FBI crime lab, calling the feds crooks. Tyrone Powers, FBI agent. The list is just growing of people going, and the more they squeeze, the more resistance it creates. Right. And I would say to the police out there, think about it. You're not allowed to deal with the real threats of this country. You're supposed to deal with those. This country is controlled by a national security dictatorship.
As of recent, yeah. And, the web is just going to become too tangled. It's going to collapse in among itself. I hope that's what happens. Thanks, Alex.
Doug, thanks for the call. Scott and Brian, everybody else, you're going to have to hold because we've got Mr. Wally coming on, the head of the Paragon Foundation, or one of their top spokesmen, who's actually on America's Most Wanted, coming out, I'm told, next couple of nights, with how the border is wide open and the Islamic terrorists are pouring across. First, a WorldNet Daily story a couple of weeks ago. But again, they're not sealing that border, are they? No, they're not. They're leaving it wide open, but telling you should take a national ID card and discussing torture on the nightly news. See how they're twisting your minds? Don't let them do it. Like my friends again, William Cooper, Bill Cooper, shot dead in the early morning hours today in his home in Arizona. We have some of the locals, like Dink, calling in to give us some of the details according to what they've been hearing. All I know is I talked to the sheriff's department, and I found it even more than what's in their press release. They admit they lured him out of the house with a fake disturbance down at the bottom. Here's just a call on a final piece of news. Bill Cooper shot and killed early this morning. In a few minutes, it'll be yesterday. There at his home in Eager, Arizona, by a SWAT team. One deputy wounded with 2 bullet holes to the head, still alive, supposedly. I do this show 6 hours a day, and I'll be up at 7 a.m. tomorrow, actually before that, doing a radio interview, then another radio interview at 10 a.m. Central Time, then 3 hours of my own show, then another radio interview, then another 3 hours, and then another radio interview tomorrow night. And all I've had is success. We go down to the Capitol, sit there all day, catch bribery going on. That helped to defeat 7 gun bills here in Texas they were saying were going to pass. Horrible stuff. Banning people under 21 from touching a handgun, under 18 from touching a rifle, even going and hunting or shooting with their parents. I could have gone, these dumb people, nobody cares about the Second Amendment, it's all over. I could have said, yeah, they're devil worshiping at Bohemian Grove, but I won't go there and get any footage of it and put it out because nobody cares. Nobody's doing anything. That attitude, excuse me, that attitude is infectious. I mean, what do you think? You can just sit there and cry or get all angry and call people stupid and then it's magically going to heal itself as if that's going to get you out of this hole? I don't care if the whole world's a bunch of morons. I'm going to fight this. And you know what? I've seen the exact opposite. You have enough time to break people's brainwashing and conditioning, enough focus, enough energy, and you're bold about it, a lot of them will wake up and will take action. But you got to keep hammering, and you got to keep working, and you got to see yourselves as leaders. If you don't do that, it's all over for you and your family. I don't care if you're for the New World Order or against it. This system is absolutely evil. All right, let's take a final call from Bill in North Carolina. Bill, you're on the air, sir. Should we just give up? I've seen a mass awakening September 11th about the New World Order, and gun sales are up 70%. What's your take on that?
Well, it sounds like a good idea to me to keep buying guns because they're going to take them away as fast as we try to get them.
Well, maybe we should just give up and say, who cares?
No, I don't think so, Alex. I wanted to say in memory of William Cooper, I've been listening to his show for several years, and I wanted to corroborate that story with the guy who just called in and said that Glenn Jacobs was no friend of William Cooper's. I'm almost certain I have that broadcast on tape. And
isn't it interesting that these guys are calling in on my show?
Yes. And that a friend of mine called me from across town and says that Glenn Jacobs was on your show, and I said, the rumor mill has begun.
Yeah, well, one of them calls in and says, I'm here locally, and, there's this guy, the newspaper guy, I read about him in some news articles going back to 95. I'd seen his name, so we called, got it, I checked the number during a break, and it was him, so we got him on, and then as soon as I started pinning him down and really asking hard questions about, all the different stuff and the listeners we were going to grill him, he just hung up.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Alex. This guy, I think he was a plant, I really do.
Well, don't worry. Over time, we're going to have time to root out, what happened here and at least get part of what developed. I know this, though, the whole thing stinks to high heaven.
Well, I'll tell you one thing to watch out for, and everybody ought to be doing as much research as they can on the web right now concerning William Cooper and anything to do with him, because just like every other incident that we've had, especially recently, all of this information is going to dry up. We need to get our hands on it and get it documented, just like he did.
Well, just in case it disappears, we've downloaded his whole site.
Yeah. Well,
first thing I did today at about 4 o'clock when I found out the bad news.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I'm really irritated over this thing, because he was a fantastic broadcaster.
Absolutely. Appreciate that call, Bill. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back tomorrow from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Central Time and back from 9 to midnight. This is horrible what happened to Bill Cooper, but it's also horrible that our borders are wide open. Enemy troops are coming in. Got to stay focused on those issues as well. If somebody takes me out tomorrow, I want you to keep fighting and knowing we're going to win. America's worth it. We still got guns, private property, mobility, our own free press. It's expanding. People are waking up. So be positive. Don't listen to Tokyo Rose telling you you're idiots. You're not. You're smart. You're leaders. You're Paul Revere's. And we're going to win this thing. I'm Alex Jones signing off. Infowars.com.
The Genesis Communication Network is proud to welcome our new sponsor, Hardin Optical Company, an astronomy company located on the Oregon coast. Right now, Hardin Optical is running a special on a 6-inch